to the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast, coming to you from pristineauction.com studios with your hosts, Jake Ciely, Chris Meaney, and Joe Holka.
What's up, Foot Clan Nation? It is the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. You just heard your host, as always, here to hopefully help you win some cash. I know it was a giant week last week. Basically, if you didn't score 300 on DraftKings, if you didn't score 200 on FanDuel, and even so, you still might not have had money. I don't know, Joe, I know you're smiling over there. Was he in any of your lineups? Because I told you, look, I was right and wrong at the same time. I didn't want to use him, but I told you it was probably going to happen, and I hate Will Fuller so much. But hey, look, now your jersey is going to pay off having one.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like I knew it was coming, right? I saw the almost 6 touchdown game coming. I've been telling you guys for weeks. No, I mean, it's great. I did have him in some tournaments, didn't have him in my main tournament. I mean, it's really hard to justify a guy with his usage. I get the price, I get all that, but in a small field GPP, he made a really good tournament fade. I still think the process was okay there. Had some shares in smaller tournaments. But yeah, not having him, you guys know by now kind of how that ended for me.
And it wasn't just him, Chris. You needed like Fuller and Thomas. And so like you needed at least 3 because we see this happen every single year. There's a few weeks where if you don't have 3 of the big, what was ended up being 5 or 6 players, you're kind of out.
Yeah, and a lot of guys that we talked about on the show went off, and you're right. You had to have at least 3 of them. I had some lineups with CMC and Thielen. I had a Fuller and CMC lineup that didn't even sniff.
Didn't cash?
No, not even close. Like not even close. So it was a huge week. There was a lot of scoring happening for sure. But yeah, I mean, Fuller's a guy that we talk about every single week here, and he's always. Jake, you always bring up his ownership projection. It's always near the top, and it is risky. And now here we go again this week with the highest total on the board. We could see 8-9 touchdowns in this game this week.
I'm looking at one. You guys know I messaged you this, the 155. That 155 on FanDuel, and I didn't even sniff cash. Like I still had a decent amount to go, and that was mostly because it wasn't even that I didn't have 3 because I had Christian McCaffrey, Thielen, and Chris Godwin, and it was the rest of the guys. Most of them were in double digits, but just one, Jalen Samuels, getting me 2 points. Just that alone destroyed the entire lineup because it was like you couldn't even have one hole in your lineup.
Well, the lineup I gave here on the show last week at cash, it scored 154 and it didn't cash.
I beat you by a point.
In a double up. Yeah. And I mean, it had Fournette 20 plus points. I mean, Thielen almost 30. Boyd was in there. Tom Brady was fine. We talked about him on FanDuel being like the 10th highest priced quarterback over there. So, I mean, yeah, you had to have all the guys who hit.
I don't remember seeing that, Joe. When was the last time you remember seeing the fact that, like, unless you had the 250 plus on FanDuel, that you weren't getting paid out?
Never, really. I mean, it's crazy because, I mean, just thinking back to kind of my main team, like, had CMC, like, I mean, at a low ownership, in my opinion, and I got the Philly defense at 3%, still didn't even sniff the cash line in this
scored 35.
Yeah, you needed them.
Crazy.
I'm looking right now, and the millionaire maker on FanDuel, the lowest position he had was Zach Ertz at 14. David Johnson was next lowest at 17, with Watson, Jones, Fuller, Thomas, Thielen, and the Eagles defense. Like that's
probably the first week like ever that like your cash lineup, if you're building like at least kind of the chalk, like you were live for the millie. It was nuts.
It was nuts, and that's a great transition. So let's talk cash.
Straight cash, homie.
You know what? I am going to mix things up, and I'm going to quarterback first on this one because one name we didn't mention, I did it. I had Mike Wright on my All in Sports podcast. I told you I was going to do it. I ordered myself a Gardner Minshew jersey, but it's got a custom nameplate, and it says Beowulf on the back because that's what his grandfather wanted to name him. I'm putting Gardner Minshew. If I'm looking to save at quarterback, I think he actually legitimately has become a cash play at quarterback.
Go ahead, Chris. I don't hate it. I'll say that I don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue it at this point. I mean, if you're playing on DraftKings, you want to spend down at the position $5K. I mean, why not? I mean, at the same thing, FanDuel, he's passed.
That's
I think,
why.
Yeah, I think he's passed every single test. I mean, he hasn't turned the ball over. He only has 1 interception. He's got the 9 touchdowns. He's coming with a decent floor. You look at the game log, his fewest points 16. So I mean, that's nice.
He's cheaper
right?
than Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I mean. he's not putting up that 0 or the -2 like Baker Mayfield. There's a little bit of safety there for sure. So I don't hate it. Leonard Fournette was a guy that we've talked about in this offense, since I think week 1 is catching a few more balls out of the backfield. So that's a nice security that he has as well. So, I mean, he wasn't actually on my radar to talk about today in cash, but I mean, I don't mind it. I didn't say anything negative. He's very impressive. Like what he's done so far, it's very Nick Foles-like stepping in and
I am changing my
home
league team name as we're doing this show to Beowulf. Let's continue.
I love it, man.
Fan, yeah.
5K though, and I mean, one of the reasons that I was so high on Kyler Murray last week is just because of how often, like the defense he was facing plays zone coverage. Same kind of thing with the Saints. They play a ton of zone coverage, so we could get a little bit more on the ground from Gardner Minshew this week at 5K in cash games. Like he's someone that, I mean, he's not throwing as deep as I would like, but if he decides to air it out this week, the Saints 32nd at defending deeper passes. So, I mean, I love it. At that price in cash games, I think he's a great value.
My one thing there, Jake, is, and I don't know if I'd go Kirk Cousins in cash, but like he's at a similar price, right?
I was thinking about that for tournaments when we get to it, so.
I mean, sure. I mean,
you want to save it, or you want to just talk about him now?
We might as well just bring him up now. I mean, $5,200. I mean, $200 more on DK and $100 more on FanDuel. And we know Kirk Cousins hasn't been phenomenal this year. He takes a lot of heat, but in a plus matchup last week where he was able to throw the ball, he came off his best game, right? 22 for 27, 300 yards, hooked up with Thielen, who we talked about a lot in this show twice. And now he's got the Eagles secondary, a team that's really good against the run, struggle against backs who can catch. So you got Cook in there, catch a few more balls. So, I mean, Cousins, and that's where I maybe just go a different way. Like Minshew, sure, but like I think there's slightly more upside in this matchup for Cousins.
Dude, we love Cousins though in this spot against the defense that pressures really well. Like I don't know, like that one seems scary to me. Cousins has been one of the worst guys under pressure in the league this year.
Yeah. Well, no. So here's the situation. So Chris and I have talked about it, so I'll just give it to you because we've done it, I think, twice already. We've talked about. Oh no, wait. The other one was the ranking show, Chris. Like all these shows start to mix together. What I was telling
none better than this one though.
No, there is none better than this one. Well, I don't know. Maybe All in Sport. I don't know. With D'Angelo Williams show. I mean,
get out of here. Get to your point.
Anyway, Kirk Cousins. So what I think you're right about the under pressure, but what I pointed out and what I've been continually pointing out about Kirk Cousins, Joe, is the fact that when he's under pressure, that's where you want Stephon Diggs. That's what happened against the Bears because he's not allowed to think too long. You don't want Kirk Cousins thinking too much because he gets over aggressive. He throws downfield, he throws outside, and he struggles in that area, especially because he usually throws to somebody who's double coverage because he gets over aggressive. So if he's forced to make quick decisions and get to Diggs in this game, but also because the secondary is so bad, and he doesn't get pressure the entire game where he has some time for Thielen and Diggs to both hit. If they both hit, that's why you like Kirk Cousins. But to Chris, what he was saying, this is why I like him in tournament, not in cash, Joe.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think he's probably in play for tournaments. Cash games, I think it's a little bit riskier, but I definitely get what you mean as far as the secondary concerns for Philly. It's just really hard for me to get on board with anyone in this Minnesota offense not named Dalvin Cook, so maybe I still have some biases I need to work through there.
So the obvious matchup of the week, Joe, Matt Ryan, does he have interest for you?
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan, I talk a lot about having a rushing floor, but it's really hard to argue the rush or the floor in general that Matt Ryan has had this year. So I think he's totally fine in this spot, of course, against Arizona. We talk about it every week. It's always a good spot. It's kind of attack for sure. It's a spot though, like he's pretty expensive, $6,400 for a guy we know he's not going to give anything on the ground. So I think he's tournament only for me. I'm sure we'll talk about a couple other guys, but even in that price range, I think I still prefer going back to my boy Lamar Jackson. Talked about targeting a team that plays a lot of zone coverage. Cincinnati, we loved Kyler for a lot of the same reasons last week, so I think Lamar could get back on track this week. Another team that gets beat deep. The difference between Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray is Lamar is not afraid to kind of air it out. I know there's a couple injury concerns that I'm sure we'll get to, but I think Lamar at 6,900 is still someone that's going to give you an awesome floor.
Yeah, I like that call. And the linebackers, go ahead, Jake.
I was going to say, Chris, his projected ownership is under Matt Ryan because you know how reactionary people are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you brought this up on the show earlier this week. Some people want to... was it a question about dropping Lamar or what to do with Lamar Jackson? It's like he's still QB1 in the season.
It wasn't dropping, but basically selling low. Is it time to move on from Lamar?
Time to move on from QB1 on the season, sure.
Yes, first sub 21 point game. Hey, Chris, you want to guess what quarterback he's tied with right now for projected ownership?
I don't know, Mahomes, Watson?
Beowulf.
Well, maybe we need to get off Minshew because everybody seems to love him. But like, it's warranted. Like, again, he's been very intriguing. Like, he really has. But for Lamar, I mean, Joe brings up some great points, and coming off that game, just his worst game of the season where he threw, he had 3 picks and I think he fumbled, and he still ends up with 14 fantasy points. Like, that's his floor. And the fact that he's averaging 76 rushing yards per game over his last 4, we've said this before, it's like starting with 2 touchdowns. You're basically starting with 2 touchdowns going up against a Bengals team who has struggled to stop the run. Their linebackers are very mediocre, and they're probably not going to be able to get to the edge, to get to Lamar Jackson. He still has that deep threat in Marquise Brown. So I love Lamar Jackson, and if people are just going to be completely off of him, wondering what to do with Lamar Jackson, I mean, all the better to roll him out. Yeah,
and we'll talk more for quarterbacks and tournaments too. As sneak preview, I'm now off Kirk Cousins, the number 2 highest projected ownership quarterback right now. So, yeah, I mean, it's quarterback. It's usually flat. You know how one day of people talking on Twitter could probably change this entire group. So keep watch. But if he's going to be number 2 or even number 3, I'm off that. Maybe I'll just go for a piece of buying. It'll be the first time, Chris, I'll be buying the icing, not the cake. It's the opposite of what I like to do.
Yeah, it's too bad because I really like that Viking stack, but Ryan is good too. I mean, most passing attempts in the NFL and 300 yards in every game.
Well, so here's how you go for it. Well, let's just jump to wide receiver. We'll come back to running backs here for a second. So here's how you get the piece of it. And like Chris, for people out there that don't know, when I always say that is buy the cake, not the icing. The cake is the quarterback. Instead of trying to figure out, like Patrick Mahomes, start trying to figure out, is it going to be Tyreek Hill if he's out there? If Watkins, if everybody's healthy, instead of trying to figure out if it's Kelsey, Watkins, Robinson, just buy the cake because the cake has to produce the ice. So the other point here is if you do want to just try and get the icing this time, this is the Stephon Diggs one, because the Stephon Diggs, to what we were talking about, Joe, before, the pressure is going to force more Diggs because he's the one to get open quicker, Chris. So is Diggs a cash game play for you? Because I think he's a cash and tournament for the fact that the Kirk Cousins ownership's so high.
I'm suddenly hungry for sweets, to be honest. Yeah, I think Thielen is. I still think Thielen is the cash game play. I don't know, not Treadwell. Yeah, I think Thielen is still, in my opinion, the safest out of the 2. I know we talked about.
And he has the higher ownership percentage.
Yeah, I know he has the higher ownership percentage, and he's more expensive. Like, you're going to have to on DK, you're going to have to spend the $800. I mean, Diggs is a real nice price on FanDuel, $5,800, I believe. Like, that's a pretty solid price considering the matchup. But I mean, even still, I just feel like Thielen is just a safer option. Like, I mean, he seems to be the guy in the red zone when they get down there, and I just don't have a problem with either of these guys, to be honest. Like, I know Cousins' ownership is projected high, but I've just watched this Eagles team every single week, and they just can't cover anybody. And yeah, they can dial up some pressure, but before that game against the Jets last week, they really hadn't gotten after the quarterback. So I think Cousins will be fine. I think he'll use both of these guys. Homer. Hey, I'm saying it in not a positive way. I'm seeing it firsthand. I mean, they were like, they had triple coverage on Devontae Adams a couple weeks ago, and he still had like double-digit catches.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that I'm trying to kind of come around on these Vikings guys. I guess I haven't really been considering as much as most people earlier in the week. I get the argument for sure. I just think that the wide receiver position this week, it seems like things are going to kind of skew towards some of these higher price guys. We haven't seen that as much. Maybe it just has to do with these wide receivers going absolutely nuts last week. But I mean, I think going back to DeAndre Hopkins makes a ton of sense, especially if people are just going to gravitate towards Will Fuller. Like on DraftKings, Will Fuller's up to $6K. Like they got really aggressive with his price. Fuller's all the way at $6,600 on FanDuel, so a little bit more palatable there. But I mean, I think both these Houston guys are going to be just piled on in cash games after what we just saw.
So where else are you looking? Because I got 2, and you talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that Brandon Cooks might not be out there, and Cooper Kupp is still, I want to say, only 7,800, because at what point does Cooper Kupp deserve to be in the 8,000 plus? And then assuming he's out there, obviously things can change, and it's still 50-50 as of today. I got to tell you, I don't care if it's his first game back. Tyreek Hill at $7,400 is in every single one of my lineups. Done, period.
Yeah, he's very interesting. 69 on DK. I mean, I probably still would play him in cash, but like if you're a big time like high roller cash game guy, I don't know if I'd put him out there just in case of like who knows if he suffers a setback or something, your day's done. But the ceiling, we know what it's like.
Yeah, it's a shoulder.
It's through the roof. Yeah, well, you just don't know, right? I mean, it could happen. I mean, again, if you're spending a ton of money, it could happen. I mean, that's just the one downfall, but it's very slim, I suppose. Like just keeping everything in the
Would you
back of your
stop trying
mind.
to jinx him?
I mean, sure, he's going to be fine. It's a high total game, like I said off the top. Like, what is it, 55 points? I mean, we could see well over that number and a lot of points scored. But you mentioned Cooper
how about
Kupp.
another one?
I mean, why not Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Why not Cooper Kupp?
Why not? And he's got 100 yards in 4 straight games, 44 targets, 29 catches, and 4 TDs in his last 4 games as well. Like, you don't really need to say anything else. Like, this guy he's a number 1 wide receiver in football.
And the price, and understandably so, despite jumping 600 and 1,000, he's still the number 1 projected wide receiver, because I think people are smart enough at this point to know. Do you know who he's tied with, though, Chris?
Don't tell me Will Fuller.
No, it's not Will Fuller. Thank God. He is, but Will Fuller's inside the top 10. Joe, I'll give you one guess who he's with.
Julio?
No, but Julio's good guess. Julio's number 3. Really good guess. I was just about to bring him up. No. Baby shark, baby shark,
wow. I'm on DD this week. I think DD.
I am too. So let's talk about DD. But you know why DJ Chark is there, right? You know why he's there. Because of Beowulf. Joe, you brought up Julio Jones.
Turned the podcast off at this point.
I know. Julio Jones. How are people not like just plugging him in at this point?
It's crazy. Like I think on kind of the subject of Cooper Kupp, people like there's still a group of people that are just thinking of it as how the offense used to be. It was Robert Woods and then it was Cooper Kupp, but we just didn't have Kupp for most of last year anyway. So I think that people, myself included, were slow to react on that, and now they've kind of come around. Julio on DraftKings for only 900 more against Arizona. I don't know. It's really hard to ignore that. And then Odell's price at 6,800. It's just, I don't know. Cooper Kupp versus Odell is kind of mine. Like,
wait. Is Odell even cash at this point though?
No.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that I think he's a great tournament play, which we'll get to. Too. But I don't know. I'm normally not spending up for these guys in cash games anyway, so I'm still kind of looking down the salary scale in cash right now.
Where are you looking for cash? Are you on the DD train like Chris? Or Chris? No. Hold on. That was your boy. I'll let you go on DD, and then we'll go back to Joe.
Yeah, no, I like DD, but I'll let Chris talk about that. The guy I was going to bring up was Robbie Anderson, especially if we get Darnold back. I guess they get 4K. He's too cheap based on what we know his ceiling is, what kind of routes he's going to run, and kind of an up-tempo game. Like hopefully the game script will be in his favor as well. 4K, it seems like a great time to jump back on Robbie Anderson.
Really? I'm more on Jamison Crowder, and it's not because of week 1. It's because the only strength for the secondary for the Cowboys is outside, actually. So, like Jamison Crowder, if week 1 is any indication, I'm not saying he's going to get 17 targets and 14 catches, but if I'm leaning one way or the other, I actually like Crowder a little bit more than I like Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, if you're shooting for upside, I'm still always going to skew towards the guy like Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, the ceiling.
Jamison Crowder, if you're talking cash games, sure. His floor is probably super safe, especially if Darnold does come back.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Crowder, cash, maybe Robbie for tournaments, but there's no question Sam Darnold back under center for the Jets is a positive for this offense, absolutely. And it looks like Herndon is pretty much doubtful to play in this game. So, I mean, I even think when we get to running backs, you can take a shot on Lev Bell this week. But, I mean, DD, the only reason I like DD is, well, we know about Chris Harris. Like, he is still a shutdown corner. I know, Jake, we joked about how maybe DJ Chark is just matchup proof now. It doesn't matter who he goes up against. He's just catching touchdowns.
You can't say it without saying do.
Yeah, leave that for you. But for DD, it's the matchup is nice, right? You're probably going to get Williams, and the fact that it's just because of that, like it's not like he hasn't been involved over the past couple of weeks. He's 17 targets, 12 catches, almost 150 yards in his last 2 games. We like Minshew. Like if that's going to be the chalk, like Chark and Minshew, like why not just kind of pivot and go DD? He's true, like Chris. A respectable price.
We love Minshew. Get it right. Love Minshew.
Here we are, like week 6, and Minshew is the highest projected quarterback, and Chark is the highest projected wide receiver. Like, I gotta that all together.
I thought he was second highest quarterback. He wasn't the highest.
I don't know.
He was up there.
Top 2 is enough.
Hold on. Wait. I would go back to it. I forget. I don't think it was that. No, Gardner Minshew is 1, 2. He's 6th. It's Murray, Cousins, Watson, Ryan, Lamar, then Minshew. So he's there. He's in the top 6. He's ahead of. Are we not paying up for Patrick Mahomes? Like, are we done? Are people just out on him all of a sudden because of one bad game with no... I mean, even with no touchdowns, he's still producing.
Yeah, he is. I just want to spend... I don't want to spend the 75. It's fine, I think, to do in maybe in tournaments.
92 on FanDuel.
Yeah, it is a big gap there between him and Watson and even Lamar. So I think he's a better play in tournaments because I think most people kind of fade away from the top of the board and try to find some value. So maybe you'll just get him like maybe 7, 8 ownership, which is appealing.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with Patrick Mahomes. I guess don't know. I mean, it's early in the week. It's still kind of hard to get exact feel for what roster construction's like. And my initial feel is that you're just going to be able to do so much more with Minshew. So even if Patrick Mahomes goes nuclear and Minshew has just an okay game, you still might be able to recover.
One more high projected ownership, and that's why I'm bringing him up because nobody did. Is Michael Gallup? You guys in on Michael Gallup?
Yeah, Gallup's pretty solid.
Yeah. I think Gallup's totally fine. If you're just looking at weighted opportunity rating, I mean, it is a smaller sample with him with that injury, but 5,600, like the only guys that have a higher weighted opportunity rating, Michael Thomas and Terry McLaurin. So, I think Gallup's probably underpriced. If everyone's just going to go to Will Fuller in that range, like I think Gallup's totally in play.
He's been very impressive in his 3 games too, Jake. I mean, 2 big blow-up games, right? And at least 6 catches in every game too.
Huge. It's huge. All right, so let's talk running backs in the cash game. And you've been saying this every single week, Joe. It's pay up at running back, pay up at running back, pay up at running back. But because of the slate, and specifically mostly because that Christian McCaffrey dude is playing at 9:30 in the morning, but with the 4 teams of the bye, with the slate the way it is it still a pay up week because your options are like much slimmer than they have been so far?
It's a lot different, that's for sure. Can we just talk about how we didn't even get to punish the 75% of people in the Millie Maker that didn't play Christian McCaffrey last week because of all this other crazy stuff that happened? Like, those people deserve to lose.
It's just, yeah.
I'm sorry, they do.
It's true, yeah. Play McCaffrey every week.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all.
It's too risky when you don't play him. If you fade him, I mean, that's what happens, right? But it's actually, I like the fact that he's not on the main slate because we could be a little bit different this week.
I'm more upset about not punishing the people that didn't play Christian McCaffrey than not having Will Fuller.
Well, tell us who you want this week.
He's playing McCaffrey anyways.
I know he's going to find out a way. Is it Kamara?
I do love Kamara at 8K. I prefer him to Dalvin Cook just because Dalvin Cook is up against Philly, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I mean, Kamara, it still seems like, to me, if everyone just wants to flock back to Michael Thomas, that's totally fine. But at some point, these short passes from Teddy Bridgewater, like Kamara is going to be the one that takes one deep. Like, it's going to happen at some point. We know his role is super safe in the passing game, all of that. If people just kind of want to jump off of that, I get it. Jacksonville's not an amazing matchup by any means. I love the other side of this game as well with Leonard Fournette, who will bring up every single week until they price him over 7K. Not sure why they haven't done that on DraftKings. Like, he's still a decent value on FanDuel as well. Like, the Christian McCaffrey light, I think we could say, is fat Christian McCaffrey, whatever you want to say about Leonard Fournette. I think he's totally in play, both of those guys. I guess we just want all the touchdowns in the Jacksonville game, right? So Minshew, Fournette for all the money.
Yeah.
And Didi.
What can go wrong?
Yeah, what can go wrong? I mean, 52 carries in his last 2 games for Fournette. Yeah, he's very much like CMC. I mean, playing over 90% of the snaps, catching a lot of balls. He just seems like a lock to touch the ball 20 times, and that's what you want for cash. I still like Zeke. I know he's been pretty disappointing, but even 12 carries last week, season low. Maybe he's a better tournament play because of the game log recently, but he obviously has that blow up appeal, and he's got a touchdown in 4 of his 5 games. So I don't know. I'm still feeling Zeke, and I'm a little uncertain, I'll be honest, about the Dallas offense, over the past couple weeks, especially, I guess, getting from behind, and, Dak has been throwing the ball a ton through the air, but I still think there's a little bit of safety with Zeke going against the Jets. 7-point favorites, could lean on him in the second half. So I have no problem with Zeke, but maybe more of a tournament play.
My only concern with Leonard Fournette is actually the matchup, only because the Saints, one thing on the defense, besides Marshawn Lattimore playing much better over the last couple of games, is they're still strong against the run. And then I don't know, this might be, and the volume is so appealing. You're 100% right, Joe. The value is still there just from the touch load compared to the price. But I just have a feeling this might be one of those like 20 carries for 75 yards type of game and no touchdown. I think that's the downside, and it's still a fine game. That's just why I'm a little bit more hesitant, where I would most weeks been with you is like, I want to pay up and just go off somebody where I feel better about the overall production, but it's still not a bad play just because of the volume standpoint. I just want to bring that up because also I wanted to point out, because I forgot to mention at the top of the show, if you want Chris's stuff, if you want my stuff, the APA, which I'm talking about right now, all the stuff that's in the DFS Footballers Podcast, DFS Pass, not the Podcast Pass. We're doing the podcast. You put in the code podcast in the DFS Pass and you get 10% off. Did I screw that up enough? Is that possible?
No, I thought it was
seamless.
perfectly.
I said podcast like 7 times, so I think they know what the code is at this point. How about that? You know what, Chris? I'm going to go to you on this one because you brought him up, and I actually have him in a lot of places because people are off him. The workload, similar to Leonard Fournette, is there. His quarterback is back, and that's Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, I like Bell. I don't know if I'm there yet in cash, but I like Bell. I mean, this guy's touching the ball more with New York than he did in Pittsburgh. It's just obviously he hasn't been that efficient. I mean,
perception is he's not.
Yeah, I mean, he ranks third in catches, 27. I mean, they had the bye week, right? And again, his quarterback, I mean, he's had nothing to work with. I mean, he's getting hit behind the line all the time. Like, I think part of that is on the Jets line. It's not great, but again, having Sam Darnold back under center, I mean, his best game of the year was week 1 against a very tough Bills defense. He caught a few balls. He found the back of the end zone, and his price now is dropped down to the fact where he's just a member of the Jets. He's mediocre. Yeah, I mean, he's $6,400 for somebody who can come away in this game with, I think he could get 7 or 8 catches. At least his floor is probably 5, right?
So what did Aaron Jones do against this defense? So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, he ate them up. So I think he's a decent price. A much better play, I think, on DraftKings than FanDuel. You want that full point for that catch.
You know what quarterback he'd be even better with? Beowulf.
Anybody?
Joe,
Man, you love this
are
guy.
you in a Le'Veon Bell?
Yeah, it's hard to argue with the volume there, right? I think that, I mean, just the target share alone should be at least enticing. It's crazy, though. I was just looking, one of the things that I look at running back in particular is just total yards from scrimmage over the last 4 games. And like all these guys that are seeing his volume, like they're all like 125, 155, like just Chubb, Cook, Kamara, but then just Le'Veon Bell with just his non-efficient like 93-yard average of total yards. I don't know. It sucks because you would love to get after that volume, but I think there's a little bit of fool's gold in there as well. Like if you think that Darnold like really elevates his offense, I totally get it. I think I still prefer Fournette.
I mean, Eli Manning could elevate this offense over Luke Falk. Let's be honest. I mean, come on.
I mean, they didn't even give him a chance last week. He didn't even run any first team reps. He was on the sidelines, like watching Darnold. And then they threw him out in that game. It was so pathetic.
I mean, that's part of the reason people are so ticked off about Adam Gase in general is because if you have any chance, you got to give him some first team reps, even though he has Luke Falk.
There's one more back, Jake. Okay, maybe you're going to mention
DJ.
No. I'll see if you guys. You said David Johnson. Obviously, if he's healthy, I mean, but that's something everybody's going to have to watch. I kind of think that goes without saying, doesn't it, Joe?
I would think so against Atlanta, but go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, I mean, a primetime matchup against the Falcons, you just can't tackle anybody, and we know their struggles against backs who can catch. But Chris Carson, like, why not? Chris Carson is somebody now who, I mean, the first 3 games, there were some question marks fumbling a football, but this is because somebody has 49 carries, 5 catches, almost 300 yards in his last 2 games. Like, we know what Seattle wants to do. We all watch primetime, Cleveland Browns struggling to stop the run. I know Kyle Juszczyk was a big part of the run blocking there, the lead blocker for sure. But I feel like Carson is one of those guys where, I mean, $6,000 on DK, you know, you want him to be involved in on the third down rolls, catching some balls. He's doing a little bit more this season, but I mean, 20 carries seems like a lock. He's the goal line back there. Russell Wilson's been so efficient. I'm just completely out on this Browns team. I just feel like there's a lot of issues on both sides, offensively and defensively. So, I mean, I think Seattle goes in there and leans on Carson, and you know, he probably could rack up 20 touches in a score.
Can I just say I'm proud of us, guys. We finally moved past like these Kenyon Drake plays, 4,400. He's gonna be popular this week. Just, I mean, what, his 15 touches? Is that what you want in your running back slot?
Drake and AP.
Like, this is great. I'm finally rubbing up on you guys. We're talking about all the good plays today at running back. This is great.
I'm legitimately like, dude, this wasn't the right. I'm saving my running back that I want to bring up for tournaments. I'm just laughing because he's the second highest owned projected running back right now. Joe is Kenyon Drake.
They're 80 yards at 4,400, and then they're going to try and pay up at wide receiver and fail. It's going to be great.
That's pathetic. I mean, in that range, AP 45, Drake 44. Honestly, and this is kind of the same thing. I'd rather just go hide. I'd rather even just maybe go hide in that matchup where we could see 60 points, and at least he's getting the ball 20 times against a weak run defense.
So significantly lower owned than Adrian Peterson and Slap. Actually, the person I'm bringing up for tournaments is laughably lower than Adrian Peterson, and so we'll have to hold on. So we're going to get to that in a second. Tight ends. Is this? Here's how I'm going to present tight ends to you guys in cash. Austin Hooper, move on.
Yeah, there's actually only 2 tight ends I think I'd play this week, and it's Kelsey and Hooper.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with Hooper against Arizona. Like 5K on DraftKings, like it's pretty crazy price there still. And like even on FanDuel, totally in play. Like
what are you dropping down on FanDuel? I'm looking like, are you really going to go bad. 400 off 2 weeks of Gerald Everett to like, and against the 49ers, are you really going to save that 400 to drop off a Hooper? I wouldn't do it.
No, it gets thin fast.
Yeah, it does.
It does. Yeah. Super fast. Like, I mean,
I suggest spending up, actually.
The 5,000s are like Herndon is not going to play now, and Jared Cook, the worst person in the world. The Houston tight ends. I mean, like, where are you going? I mean, Delaney Walker has all of a sudden been miserable. He's facing Denver.
Bad. Jeremy Sprinkle?
Played him last week. Noah Fant, 2,900 on DraftKings. I think he's still fine.
You love Fant so much.
He's a freak athlete, man. Like, and like, I don't think that offense is particularly good.
I don't disagree with you. He was my sleeper in my column on DFS.
He's running a lot of routes. He's got 101 routes over the last 4 games. And guys like in that range, like you're getting up to Mark Andrews, you're getting up to Zach Ertz. Like he's running a ton of routes and he's talented and he's 2,900. They don't move his price. So, yeah,
he's 45 on FanDuel, which is now 4,000's min, so close to min. I mean, he's essentially
some sort of concessions, I think. And no, I'm with you. Austin Hooper, the cash play. I think it's really hard to argue with that. Kelsey's hard to get to, which makes me like want to try some lineups this week just to see what
for tournaments
what leads me to. And what you said about running back too, we don't have Christian McCaffrey, so I'm just gonna have way more salary than normal. It's gonna be awesome.
I mean, the gap. Do you see the gap for Kelsey on DraftKings?
That's huge.
1,600. That's
like double wrong, or he's like not a great play.
Yeah, you know? I mean it's really what it's going to come to. All right, so let's do this. It's time to move over. Let's talk to tournament wise.
You down with GPP?
So let's stay at tight end then. I mean, because we're pretty much already jumping into that conversation, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room if you're going off of Hooper anyway. Is that the play, Joe? Is it to jump up to Kelsey, or is Ertz in your conversation as well?
Yeah, I think Ertz is fine. I actually really like Mark Andrews again. 4,800. Like, I mean, I think that the pace in that game, like you can make an argument that Baltimore is going to run more plays than almost anyone this week. I mean, I mentioned how much I like Lamar against Cincinnati, high team total. We know that's important at tight end. Like he's 4th in weighted opportunity rating. He's not running as many routes, but he's running deeper routes for a tight end typically. Another athlete that I think we can target at 4,800. I think that, I mean, most people are just going to go the Austin Hooper route. So I think just like price pivoting to Mark Andrews makes a lot of sense in tournaments.
Man, it's just, I can't even think of a low price guy. Like I'm embarrassed to even mention like Jeremy Sprinkle at $2,600. Like it's just, there's just nothing. You know what I mean? Like it's just, I think I would, Fant. I mean, I figure that Everett is probably going to be pretty chalky, but at $3,600, I mean, if Brandon Cooks doesn't play in this game, and even if he does, heck, like Jared Everett has just been a part of this offense. Jake, you talked him up, I think last week is just, a highly touted guy coming out of college and an early pick and 19 targets, 12 catches the last 2 games. Like I know, like he's not going to do what he did last week. He's not going to rack up, 130 plus yards. And a lot of that came in garbage time. And I say garbage time, but really they were in the game. It's just they had no run game, and they haven't had a run game all year. So Goff is just throwing the ball like crazy lately.
Well, what if there's no Todd Gurley and no Brandon Cooks?
Yeah, he popped up on the injury report. So, I mean, we'll get to quarterbacks in a little bit, but if that's going to be the case.
No, Chris didn't just pop up in injury reports, popped up with a long week, and McVay said it took him by surprise. Like, that's
a big red flag. Yeah, that's a big red flag for sure. And I don't want any piece of Brown, and I just don't feel like they're going to have a lot of success running the ball if it is Brown, right? So this is probably another game where Goff, drops back 50 plus times, and if he drops back 50 plus times, Everett's getting close to 10 targets at $3,600. It's not bad.
Yeah. One last thing on this, just for tournament places, if we're talking about it, Ertz is behind Will Dissly and Mark Andrews and George Kittle and Everett and Hooper. Like Ertz is down, so
now's the time to get in on him. I think.
Yeah, to that point. Strangely enough, Austin Hooper and Travis Kelce are tied for number 1 at tight end. Travis Kelce, despite that price, maybe he's not the tournament play you thought, Joe. It's going to be another week. I'm not saying that to you, but there's no reason to pay up if he's still going to have that kind of ownership.
Sure. And I mean, we should probably talk about George Kittle, right? Like he's a guy that I haven't played much this year just because of how much they're running and how much like he's been blocking because of that running. But I don't know. Just after that primetime game, I think he probably goes over-owned anyway. I prefer Hooper. I prefer paying down a little bit for Mark Andrews and probably Ertz at that point too, just because he's playing against Minnesota. And if there's been one spot to kind of attack Minnesota, it has been with the tight end, we saw what Waller did to them. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think about Kittle, because I think he goes the lowest owned of all these guys, don't you? Or maybe over owned because of that primetime game. I'm kind of going back and forth.
Well, right now, like I said, he's fifth, and you're what you just brought up about blocking. That's actually my concern now, because they lost Juszczyk and they lost their tackle. So
yeah, it's huge. That's a huge underrated loss, Jake.
Yeah, and it's not, obviously that's more Tevin Coleman and Breida concerns, but this kind of, and it's not going to be OJ Howard bad, Chris, but the fact that what if they start asking him to block more? What if he's only running routes 60% of the time versus 80% of the time? Like that's a concern.
Yeah, it is a concern. It's possible, but it's also possible that maybe he just gets a few. Maybe they lean on him a little bit more as well if they can't get that.
It could go either way. Obviously.
Yeah, it could go either way. But it's very interesting to hear like he's not even really kind of talked about in that top range of tight ends, right? I mean, people are kind of down on Ertz and Kittle. Again, Hooper is the obvious play. If you can get up to Kelsey, I like it. But it's a nice pivot, Ertz and Kittle. I think have some shares of both of those guys.
I got to tell you, so let's talk running backs, and I'm looking at running backs right now, and I like that better when people didn't have so many shows and information to listen to. We were able to take better advantage, because I didn't even notice this. Le'Veon Bell is the number one projected running back right now in ownership. So, exactly. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's oh man, it's like people are getting too smart. So here's mine, and this is, I think, interesting because, again, anytime you have a running back, and we know this because we say this all the time, and you have a running back that doesn't catch much, you lose value in DFS. That's the truth, especially on both sites. But this is the running back that we've seen it before. 2 catches can turn into 80 yards because once he gets running, holy hell, get it out of the way. The one way you beat the Broncos is running the ball. He doesn't even need to catch the ball. And I think Derrick Henry is an interesting pivot at the price range he's at, because the Broncos have been abysmal, honestly, against the run so far. And if the Titans have any prayer in this game, it's give Derrick Henry 25 touches.
Yeah, I was going to bring him up in cash, actually, just because.
See, that's why he's more tournament than cash for me. Like, I feel. Go ahead, Chris, but I feel like he's got a floor in cash, but it's still like it's a mediocre floor.
It is a mediocre floor. My one problem on DK is that full point. You alluded to it. I mean, I think he only has like 5 catches through 5 games this year, but
one of them was for a huge touchdown.
Yeah, one of them was for that huge touchdown. But you know what both of these teams want to do, right? They want to run the football. They're going to play at a slow pace. It's going to be a whole lot of Lindsey and Freeman on the other side, and then a whole lot of Derrick Henry for the Titans. So I mean, 5 touchdowns on the season, at least 47. He's got 47 carries in 2 games, and at least 78 yards in 4 of his 5 games. So that's not a bad floor. I mean, you're looking at almost double-digit points really from this guy. So I don't hate it.
Even on DraftKings.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Yeah, you're right about the Broncos' run defense.
Before Joe jumps in here, since we're on this game, Chris, it's 2 running backs we really haven't talked about much this entire season on this show, Lindsey and Freeman. Should we be more interested in them?
I think maybe Lindsey, just because of his. I mean, both of these guys are actually catching balls out of the backfield, but Lindsey's got at least 4 targets, or 4 catches rather, in 4 of his 5 games. So he's involved. He's looked pretty good. And again, same thing. They want to run the football there. They want to use both of these backs. I feel like maybe in tournaments, both of them are nobody's really thinking about them because the fact it's almost like a split. I mean, it's Lindsey most of the time, but it's still almost like a split. And I think
why.
Yeah, that's my one problem with it. It's like, where does the ceiling lie? Like if you were to give Lindsey 20 touches, I mean, he's going to return value.
Right.
I'm not playing any of these guys.
I'm not interested in either of them either, but
probably okay. I'm just not playing any of them.
Well, I should tell you how you really feel, Joe.
No, I love it. Yeah, be straight up and honest. I mean, I'm not getting cute with either of them either.
It's fine. Yeah, no, and again, like
fine, I will.
You should always think of my case as I'm playing a small field single entry tournament. I don't play these really super large fields, so maybe they're in play for those people. They're just not in play for me.
So who's in play for you?
It's all the guys we've talked about at running back.
Okay.
I think that I don't really care about the ownership with those guys. I think that we've basically already touched on all. I think that with Leonard Fournette, Le'Veon Bell staring us in the face in the mid 6Ks at that type of volume, I still think it's fine just to go to those guys, pick your poison with Zeke and Kamara, and just move on. At least we have the salary to kind of pay up a little bit of some of these other spots this week.
No, fine. Well, then I'll give you one more. I'll give you one more for tournaments since you don't want to, you hate all these guys, and we'll see what your reaction is. I'm going to watch your face as I say his name, because the other running back all of a sudden can't pass protect, and the other running back has been banged up this entire time, and then saw his snap count go from like 70% to almost nothing. I see you shaking your head already. No Damian Williams?
Anyone watching this on YouTube later? No, Damian for me.
I don't like Damian. I'm not a truther. I mean, the only time I'd be interested in Damian is in DFS.
I am kind of a Damian truth. I'm more of a Andy Reid truther, but yeah, no.
Chris hates him so much. You can see him like broken down on the side of the road, and he would throw his milkshake at him. Like he hates Damian Williams.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate Damian Williams. I just didn't understand the love for Damian heading into season-long formats for a guy who has only had like 50 carries in one season. So
you said he has the worst beard in sports. I know come on, Chris.
I mean, he may have the worst beard in sports. I know he's not a durable running back. That I know, but you know what? I'm glad you bring him up because again, it's a high total game. The Chiefs cannot run the football. LaShawn McCoy, I don't know if he's in the doghouse or not. I can't imagine he's going to come into this game and get double-digit carries. And if they continue to struggle running the football, then that's good news for Damian Williams because it's not Shady who's getting those third down reps. It's Damian Williams. So if he comes away in this high total game with 6-7 catches, he's probably going to have a decent day for you. It's just there's a lot going on in that backfield right now to feel good about it.
All right. So wide receiver. Go ahead, Joe. Give us some since you basically threw up your hands in the air and didn't wave them around like you just don't care, but wide receivers.
I don't know. I guess I have just takes on running backs. I think just 25 Christian McCaffrey just really bothers me. Anyways, I think that. What do you guys think about going back?
You're not letting that go.
But I think it's egregious. So Marquise Brown again, if he's healthy, I don't know. I play this guy every week, so I feel like this is going to be my Will Fuller.
I was just about to say that he's your Will Fuller.
Yeah. And I guess everyone's going to jump on him at the right time, and I'll fade him, and then just get buried again. So, but I think Marquise Brown is at a point now, like 6,200. Like his price is still going up. Surprisingly, like I don't know. I do like Lamar a lot this week, so I'm trying to figure out different ways to kind of go about pay up at least a little bit more than normal at wide receiver. I think Odell, again, I mentioned Odell at 6,800. Like at that point, I just think that he's worth a tournament shot against this Seattle team. Yeah, that's fine. The team total is totally fine. But I mean, top 10 in weighted opportunity rating for Odell Beckham at 6,800. If we're considering some of these other guys in the same range, I think that Odell is an interesting pivot off of Cooper Kupp up there.
I like that call. A guy in a similar kind of skill set. I'm not crazy about him, but a tournament dart throw, maybe Marquise Goodwin. If it's hard to get behind any really San Francisco 49ers wide receiver, but if the Rams are going to score some points, and I have some respect for the 49ers defense, but I do still think that they'll score some points, I think I have to take some shots downfield. So I feel like Goodwin is decent. And Jake, what about Odell Beckham? Like if you're going to play Beckham, isn't now the time to play Beckham?
I mean, that's
the fact
what
he's
Joe's
had 4
going
catches
with,
in his last 2 games.
It's just.
I know
he's a wide receiver
risky,
too. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that's what he's turned into at this point because,
especially on his team.
Well,
Landry's ahead of him.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to get to. And the fact is, it's not just Odell Beckham. Like, it's not Odell Beckham in his own right here. Is because. Odell Beckham should have had 2 more catches in that game. Being Odell Beckham, most above average wide receivers should have had 2 more catches. The ones that he dropped. Well, I say drop with quotes because, again, they weren't like right in his breadbasket. But all that being said is it's Baker Mayfield in this offensive line. And it's like for all the complaints that we have about other situations, other offensive lines and other quarterbacks that are under pressure so quickly and can't make decisions, that's what Baker Mayfield is dealing with. So what's the outlet valve? It's Jarvis Landry. So Odell Beckham, obviously because he's Odell Beckham, is a pure tournament play. But even so, against Seattle, I'm a little bit more hesitant. I would feel better if it was a little bit better matchup, only because Trey Flowers has been playing much better, and Shaq Griffith is okay. He's not great. It's just it's a mediocre matchup. That's all.
Seattle, though, they give up, like, at least they're above league average and giving up completions 5 to 15 yards down the field. So what if Odell just takes one of those slants to the house and everyone's just has all this recency bias?
Jarvis Landry. But you're right. You're definitely right.
Could be either of them, and I definitely think that Landry is the one that probably makes more sense. I guess, I don't know, something about Odell at 6,800 at low ownership, it just, I don't know. In tournaments, I think that I'm at least going to consider.
Yeah, man, the questions, Jake, at The Athletic on Tuesday about Odell, like, what do I do with Odell? Like, I can't even put him in my lineup. He's not coming near my lineup. Should I play, like, Crowder over him this week? Like, this little things like that. I mean, that's the feeling on Odell Beckham Jr. this week. I was at least encouraged the fact that Cleveland tried to get him the ball. I mean, I said this to you on Monday, Jake. There was one point in the game where he had more passing yards and rushing yards and receiving yards. Like they were trying to get him a little bit more involved, whether it was some end around, some rushing, throw the football, a punt return that led to a fumble. He's trying to do too much, but they're at least trying to get him the football. I'm not in on Baker and the offense, but to Joe's point, I mean, low ownership of Odell Beckham Jr. at $6,800 in DraftKings. He just needs that one catch. We saw it against the Jets. He took that to the house. Not everybody needs one catch. Come on.
I'm joking.
I know, but still.
Hold on. I'm checking Odell Beckham's ownership percentage. He is tied for 44th with Michael Thomas, Mohamed Sanu, and Calvin Ridley. So there you go.
Michael Thomas is interesting as well. This guy's just as good.
He's facing Jacksonville.
Bridgewater.
His price skyrocketed, and he's facing Jacksonville. So there's a interesting. So you bring him up, Chris. So is tournament play for you?
Yeah, tournament play. I mean, he's getting just so much volume. Like all the targets are going to Michael Thomas. So I mean, yeah, the fact that people are afraid of this Jacksonville defense still. You don't even know about Ramsey yet, and he's been on Ramsey before, and he's been fine. So yeah, I mean, that's probably why then the ownership is low. I get it. But, I mean, this guy has been just as good. Like I said, he's been just as good without Brees.
But here's the thing. So if everybody knows this and pays, I don't know, you know this, Chris. Joe knows this, and that wasn't supposed to be. What's the word where you sound like you're smarter than everybody? That was supposed to be condescending. That wasn't supposed to be condescending. But if you know about Michael Thomas, he doesn't play outside like your typical wide receiver. He's a big slot like Juju Smith-Schuster and the rest. Well, guess where Jalen Ramsey doesn't play that often. So for all the concern, if Jalen Ramsey's out there, it's not like he's going to shadow Michael. Well, I mean, they might do something they've never done before, but to this point, at least, he wouldn't shadow Michael Thomas. Joe.
And if you're Jacksonville, you probably should do something you haven't done before.
You should.
There's nobody else really on that team besides Kamara, right? But, I mean, you should do what you can to take away
how other
Michael
things
Thomas.
Are working out that they've never done before, right? Beowulf. Go ahead, Joe.
We should get like a little ticker for that every time Jake does that.
Ding.
Ding. Yeah. No issues with Michael Thomas. He's leading the slate in weighted opportunity rating and yards per route run. It's a great play. For all the reasons that I think Kamara's in play, Michael Thomas is in play. They're getting similar targets, right? But Michael Thomas could be the one that easily just continues to go nuts, and no one's playing him where they should be probably. Before
we hit quarterbacks, and Chris too, obviously, just to backtrack to running back, we didn't talk about it, but I think for cash and tournaments, this is important for everybody out there. It doesn't matter if it's cash or tournament. If there is no David Johnson, it's almost free square Chase Edmonds, right?
I think so.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, it would be pretty chalky, but yeah.
I don't care. This is one of those situations I don't even care if he's 50% owned. I am a Chase Edmonds supporter.
Yeah, me too. I think he actually deserves a few more touches. No disrespect to DJ. They're having a hard time in the red zone. Maybe they need to lean on Chase Edmonds just a little bit more. I don't know. But yeah, absolutely. Against the Falcons, it's a great match. We talked about how they can't tackle. I think it's like 3 years in a row now that this team just has struggled to stop back so you can catch it at the backfield. So $4,600. I was going to say it's pretty chalky, but at that point, chalk's okay. Like it's perfectly fine to take the value and move on.
Edmonds has already had a pretty significant, at least role in the passing game as well, like 4 targets last week. So yeah, no, I mean, it's I don't know if it's like we looked at the Gallman play as like a guy that if he sees even 90% of Saquon's role and he can catch passes and that's what they want to do in that offense, like at that point, yes, you take kind of the value, and if you can project him for enough touches, he's totally fine.
All right. Any quarterbacks you guys want to talk about, or do we pretty much hit all the quarterbacks? Because as always, it's pretty flat. So what are you really going to do? I see you're kind of nodding your head back and forth there, Joe. So
I was considering, I mean, I haven't played this guy yet this year, and it feels kind of bad. But I'm interested in Dak at 62. He's kind of jamming between all these other guys we talked about. No, I mean, I like Mitchell a lot. But Dak, I mean, one thing that I do like too is just how much he's been throwing the ball deep this year. So he's leading the slate in yards per attempt. And we will say that the Jets too, like they're 27th in defending deep passes. So that fits. Decent team total. I know they're on the road. Get a little bit on the ground from Dak. I think he's fine. Dak to Gallup, I think, is strongly in play for tournaments too.
Yeah, I like that call.
No Patrick Mahomes for you guys?
Well, again, like Mahomes is fine if you want to spend up in tournaments.
Yeah,
and
that's
get
fine.
Him at a low ownership. Yeah, I mean he's perfectly fine. I obviously have no complaints. He talked about the struggles that they have to run the football. So maybe it means more passing attempts. Yeah, I think he's good. I think he's good. I like Dak a lot as well, and I don't mind taking some shots on Goff. Like I said, if he's just going to drop back and throw, I mean, he's got like over 100 throws in his last 2 games. So I mean, if there's no Gurley, I mean, I think it means even more throws. Maybe the offense is not as efficient, but I mean, this guy is just dropping back so much.
Well, then let's talk about that with the stacks.
Stack Attack.
Is that where you're going, Chris? Is it a Ram stack for you?
No, it's not. I guess I have the chalkiest stack of all time with Kirk Cousins and Diggs and Thielen, but again, I just think this is crazy. But I'm gonna roll that stack out in at least one tournament, and I have no problem, in cash as well. I've seen what I've seen from the Eagles' run defense. It's very solid. So I think Kirk Cousins is going to be forced to throw the ball.
So I'm very intrigued, and it's only a 2-man stack because you have to pay so much, but I'm going to have Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill together. Obviously, that's going to change if Tyreek Hill's not out there, but I want those two with the fact that nobody wants Patrick Mahomes. If I could get Patrick Mahomes at a low ownership, like his price isn't going to drop. He's always going to be around 9,000 anyway. But to get him at a low ownership with Tyreek Hill at a low price doesn't happen very often. So that's where I'm going to go. Joe, I know yours. Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews. That's yours.
Damn it! No, I'm just kidding. I think I've said that was my stack the last 3 weeks, so exactly. I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. I think that going back to Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe we leave out Will Fuller and add in your boy Kiki. So Kiki is someone that he has been involved in every game. He didn't hit a great ceiling or anything for us, even in the last week's game, but just fading the Will Fuller. If Will Fuller is going to be chalk again, I mean, they're going to have to be passing to keep up with KC. So I don't mind going Watson, Hopkins, Kiki, and leaving Fuller out of the stack.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm kind of curious now that you mentioned it. We didn't even see what Will Fuller's projected ownership was. I'm assuming it's got to be high. Wow, it's not as high as I thought it would be. He's behind Larry Fitzgerald. He's down there with Adam Thielen. Still in the top.
Everyone may have just fade him this week. He's not doing it again. His price is higher.
The price went so high in 1 week.
It did. And it's such a dream matchup too, right?
It is. But DeAndre Hopkins is actually 5th as of right now. So there you go.
I love Hopkins.
People are getting sharper. I guess I need to almost double take this at times now because it's everyone's going to jump off. But that's what people would do 3 years ago. Maybe people are getting better.
That's why I said they need to stop listening to so many things. It was better back when people were trying to find things out on their own 3-4 years ago. All right, so let's put our lineups at each other. Actually, what was your score last week? I beat Chris by 1 point. What was your score? Well, no, not in ours. I was second in ours. I should have changed that lineup. Who won that one?
I don't know. I think I won. We only had 2 people that actually joined
Chris
the contest.
Didn't even join? What the hell, Chris?
I didn't see a notification.
Chris is going to be I had 210. I win. Haha.
No, I said what I had. I mean, you had 210. I mean, I had to have 300 to be excited.
Yeah, that's true. All right, then fine. Boom. Here we're going to go. Battle Royale. Let's put our lineups out there.
DFS Battle Royale.
I haven't really gone first on most anything today, so I'm taking this one. And unfortunately, it's not involving Beowulf. Sorry, I know everybody's expecting that. I know exactly.
No, I told this guy up 30 times and not even playing my lineup.
No, because I wanted to do the Patrick Mahomes because I like what I've been able to construct here. This is one of those lineups where I look at it and I'm yeah, this is winning some money, and then we get around to Sunday and I'm yeah, it scored 105 points. What the hell happened? So here we go. Patrick Mahomes, Bell, and David Johnson. Obviously, I'm going to change that depending, but as of today, Bell and David Johnson, Tyreek, Kupp, Diggs, Hooper, Westbrook, which I don't usually do on FanDuel. I usually have a running back there, but I was saving money because I'm taking the Rams defense. We didn't talk defenses, so let's do that while we're talking about our lineups. But I think the Rams, with the loss of the offensive line piece, with the loss of what they've seen with no use check, with the fact that, hey, Jimmy Garoppolo's been kind of, so back and forth, and if he is forced to pass more, I feel like this is a Rams game where you could potentially get some turnovers and a potential touchdown. I think the Rams are a really fun play in general.
Interesting. Okay.
I think the Rams probably have performed below their expectations
Very
as
much
far as
so.
sacks this year. So at some point, they were a defense we were talking about a couple weeks ago, I think, and their prices at a point
and
where
seasonal, they were one of the top 3 defenses off the board.
Interesting. I mean, my only concern is just that, like, the San Francisco's not going to throw, right? They've made that very clear. And I don't know. I think it makes a sense from kind of a sack perspective. I just don't know how many opportunities there's going to be through the air. But yeah, no, I think that.
Well, see, that's where I think that to Chris's point, if the Rams get up quick, the 49ers can't say that we're just going to, hey, we're down 14-0. Let's keep running the ball to get back into the game. I see your face. And you never know. That's true. You do never know, but you would think. But the biggest thing too is I'm looking at it, and there's nobody on the Rams defense this week. So I'll even give you the top two defenses right now are the Chiefs and the Redskins.
Really? I would have thought Baltimore would have been up there against Cincy.
No, Baltimore is mid-pack, surprisingly.
It's interesting. It's an interesting week. Like, I don't know if I want to go up to the top. I actually don't want to go up to the top of the Cowboys at 43. And then Baltimore at 41 is fine. But like after that, like you're not like, the Pats are off the slate, and some other big scoring defenses that we've seen are just not there. So it's a weird week for defenses.
The only two lower than the Rams right now are Jaguars and Seahawks. Maybe the Seahawks. I mean, I
like the 49ers. As much as I talked about Goff, the 49ers are in my lineup, right now. So, I mean, San Fran at 35. They've solid. Been a defense that's, as much as I like Goff and throwing the ball, that's part of it, right? I mean, if Goff is going to continue to drop back and we're seeing picks, like San Fran ranks in the top 3 in almost every single defense 35. Category, like picks and on FanDuel they are. Interceptions, they got 7. Fumble recoveries, they got 4. They got 2 return touchdowns. They've only played 4 games. They have 13 sacks. And they got after the quarterback. Part of that is Cleveland's line, but I mean, this is a defense it's pretty good, and they got some guys who can really get after the quarterback, right? Bosa is a player. So at $3,500, I actually don't know what their place. $2,700 in DraftKings. I like them even more over there.
If it's Minshew and Cousins week, does that mean we just want all the Philly and New Orleans?
I had a lot of Philly in my defense originally.
I was shocked how low they were last week. I mean, I don't know. They pressure so much. I get that everyone thinks their secondary is bad, but I think that they're going to play Kirk Cousins in this O-line, like they're going to get to him. So I'm interested in that. I think if Baltimore is really not going to be that popular against Cincy, I think that is extremely interesting. Like, I mean, we're always trying to target home favorites, right? And I think that they're one of the teams that, I mean, against Cincy, it makes a lot of sense to me. Cincy's going to throw the ball a ton. So I love Baltimore. They're going to be lower.
I just changed my lineup and I like it even better now.
Oh, too bad you already gave it.
Nope.
I actually had to change my lineup as well because I had like the same 3 wide receivers as you. I'll just give it now. I'm going with Cousins at the top.
Okay, well, that's automatically different.
Yeah, Zeke and Bell for running backs. I got Alvin Kamara as the third back in the flex spot.
Wow.
And then I am sticking with Westbrook and Cooper Kupp. I got Larry Fitzgerald in there, Travis Kelce at tight end, and then the 49ers defense.
Ooh. Did you give yours, Joe, or you just kind of like danced around it?
I'm trying to figure out if I can leverage my defense versus your lineup, but I guess that's not going to happen.
Here, I'll even let you try because I changed my lineup because I didn't realize the 49ers were that cheap. So I put it in 49ers. I took out Kupp because I'm not going to do that. And now instead I have Odell Beckham and I have Scary Terry in the flex. Yeah.
He's interesting too. We didn't bring him up, but he should be perfectly fine.
Case Keenum's back at quarterback.
Yeah, and he got shut down last week against the Pats, so I mean, I think he can bounce. He's going to get a bounce back game.
Interesting. All right. Well, since I didn't use them for my stack, I'm going to go back to Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews. No big shock there. I'm sure everyone listening. But I will say that on the other side of, I did consider at least going back to Boyd, who we didn't talk about today. But at running back, Leonard Fournette, Alvin Kamara, I get that they're in the same game. People are just like bringing that up all the time, how you can't do that. I think you can do that with these guys that are extremely game script independent anyway. So Fournette, Kamara, I'm going to play same as Jake, either one of Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson. I have both of them in right now. But as of now, it is Le'Veon Bell. On the other side of that game, I'm going to play Michael Gallup at wide receiver. And then I'm going to jam in Odell Beckham as my last wide receiver and play the Atlanta Falcons defense against the Cardinals. 3,800 seems like a decent.
You know what I just realized about Odell Beckham? Tell me if I'm wrong. Look at him on FanDuel and tell me that jersey is not really on him. I feel like they just kind of put the jersey on his Avi. Yeah, it's like kind of because the sleeves are like flat in the front.
He looks like a guy that wants to play with Daniel Jones.
I don't think that jersey's on him. I think they just found a picture and slapped it there instead. So
really square and looks like they just painted it on them.
I like that lineup a lot. I do. And for you guys out there, hopefully you like this show a lot. And hopefully you're checking out the DFS entire suite of offerings that they have out there with the podcast code 10% off. Follow Joe Holka at Joe Holka, which he also has on Instagram, which you'll get the posts for all this, the YouTube channel for the video. If you want to watch us make all these conversation talking points and blah, 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 and all that stuff. Those are very good grammar to finish out the show. Chris Meaney at Chris Meaney. I'm at All In Kid. We will be back next week, hopefully to celebrate some winnings. And, by the way, hopefully celebrate more Gardner Minshew. Do it with me, guys. Come on. Beowulf. Do it, Joe. You want to do it. Beowulf.
Didn't even have him in your lineup.
He doesn't need to be. He'll still win somehow.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com.